All right, hello Neogenians, welcome to Dawn of the New Mind, and today we are talking about the ancient demon that could destroy your mind or make you unstoppable, because we're talking about one of the most dangerous Qlippoth on the Tree of Death, known as Golachab, the Burning Ones. And this realm is all about obsession, addiction, and destructive willpower. And if you don't master it, it's something that's going to master you. This is it's described as one of the most dangerous Qlippoth on the Tree of Death. And it's a force that exists within you and is part of why the world is being destroyed right now. So it's very important that we recognize this force that is within us and begin to harness that fire, the fire of hell, so we can use it as fuel, rather than having it burn us alive from the inside. So that's what we're talking about today. We're gonna get started here. As always though, please make sure you hit like and subscribe, because this is more than just a channel. This is a revolution of consciousness. We're here to wake the world the hell up. So when you hit like and subscribe, it helps reach more people. If you want to help out even more, consider becoming a member. You get access to a lot of great stuff, like free downloads on inner transformation. I am going to be making a free download for this video summarizing everything we're talking about today, free for members. You also get access to all my downloads on the Tree of Death, all my downloads on alchemy, all my downloads on rituals, etc. You can also get access to our exclusive members only videos, and we're having a members only video right after this called The One Sin Jesus Says You'll Never Be Forgiven For, the unforgivable sin. Yeah, did you know there's a sin that Jesus won't forgive? We're gonna be discussing that, and it terrified me as a child. So, let's see. And if other than that, check out my books. You can check out this one if you like, the topic of reaching higher consciousness and self-transformation, psychogenesis, self and universal transformation. Check it out. And follow me on Spotify. I'd appreciate it if you do, because I'm trying to get our numbers up on Spotify so we can reach more people across platforms. And we're growing pretty fast there, but I want to grow even faster. So go follow on Spotify. Links for all of the stuff that I'm talking about are in the description of this video. So just check out the description. There's a ton of links. You can do that. All right. So let's get started, my friends. We are continuing to talk about the Tree of Death. And the Tree of Death is, of course, the structure of the shadow side of your mind or your soul, depending on how you want to think about it. And today we are exploring the aspect of the Tree of Death known as Golachab, the burners, or the burning ones. And this is incredibly important, because if this is something you don't master, it's going to master you. And if you repress it, then you very well could be dominated by someone else's will. And this is the source of like tyranny itself, cruelty, fascism, and fear. But integrated, we can harness that fire into revolution, righteous anger, and the unbreakable will to destroy every chain that holds us down. Okay, so we're gonna go by layer through layer through this whole Qlippoth, this whole realm of the burning ones, from archons to demons, the destroying god, and you're gonna know exactly how to stop this fire from consuming you and start using it to burn down whatever enslaves you, as well as fuel for your transformation, okay? Because the truth is that what we're talking about, Golachab, it's already inside of you, burning right now. Even if you don't know it, it's there. So the question is, are you gonna let it control you, or are you gonna understand how to harness it? That's what we're talking about today, okay? So let's jump right into this. I'm gonna do a really quick refresher for those who don't know what the Tree of Death is. If you haven't seen my other videos on it, that's okay. You don't need to get something out of this video, but just a quick refresher, okay? So we're taking a look at the Tree of Death and the Tree of Life. So what the Tree of Life is a map of the structure of your consciousness and higher consciousness, okay? And the Tree of Death is its shadow and is a map of your unconscious or your shadow self or destructive and chaotic behavior, okay? So the Tree of Death are the aspects of you that are associated with chaos, destruction, and the shadow self, whereas the Tree of Life is associated with higher consciousness and higher states of awareness and what one would, usually typically categorize as more light side aspects. Now, the reason why that we take a look at these things and why that they are important is because these exist within you. Whether you like it or not, they are within you. So if you face them, if you face your demons, then you can use their power to enhance your life. If you don't face your demons, they're just going to control you from the shadow. Okay, so we are beings of both light and dark. We want to integrate the two together. So we've been exploring the different Qlippoth on the tree of death. Each one of these spheres is known as a Qlippoth. Each one of these spheres on the tree of life is known as a Sephirot, or Sephirot Qlippoth, Sephirot Qlippoth, or Sephirot and Qlippoth. Okay, so they're the shadows. The Qlippoth is the shadow of the Sephirot, and each one of these represents an aspect of your shadow self, or an aspect of your unconscious, or an aspect of your destructive and chaotic tendencies. So, and this is expressed in symbolic and mythological terms, like angels and demons, because what we are doing is communicating with our unconscious mind, and your unconscious mind does not communicate through language in the way that we understand it in terms of left brain consciousness, but rather through symbolism. And so we are using this as a tool to symbolically access our unconscious and the powers within our unconscious. Okay, so let's get started here with today's topic, where we are talking about this Qlippoth right here, known as Golachab or Golachab. Golachab or Golachab. Golachab is the shadow of Gevurah or Gevurah. So Golachab is the shadow of Gevurah, or Golachab is the shadow of Gevurah. So this is the light side aspect. This is the shadow aspect. Okay. And this Qlippoth, Golachab, is almost always described as the most violent and destructive of the whole Qlippothic realm. Okay, so of the entire realm, this Qlippoth is the most violent and destructive. So on the tree of life, Gevurah, what is it? It's about strength and discipline and the power to cut away what's unnecessary. So even in the light side aspect, it's very harsh. Discipline, strength, severity, cutting away what's unnecessary, being strict. So it's already pretty harsh. And Golachab is the shadow of that already pretty harsh Sephirot. So in its shadow form, that energy of Gevurah collapses into rage, obsession, and destructive fire, injustice, and cruelty. Golachab is called the burners or the burning ones. And this is a fire that consumes. So when you think of Golachab, think of the landscape of hell itself. That's what we're talking about here. That's the kind of energy that we're talking about here. Think about volcanic forces, aggression, obsessive lust, revenge, and hyperfixation all rolled together. So we can think of Gevurah as willpower, Golachab as the shadow of willpower is obsession and hyperfixation. So, for example, like I talked about obsessive lust, right? We talked about lust before in terms of this Qlippoth over here, Arab Zarak, or Zarak, Arab Zarak. I just say Zarak for short because some of these are a goddamn mouthful. So Zarak is, so lust is over here in Zarak, but Zarak is the shadow of emotion, okay? It's the shadow of emotion. Golachab is the shadow of willpower. So it's not just emotion here, it's hyperfixation. It's not just like if we're using lust as an example, it's not just lust, it's obsessive lust. Not just desire, but desire that eats everything else alive. Addiction, compulsion, attraction mixed with suffering. And it's the kind of destructive passion that can burn you up from the inside. Okay? When we talk about the demonic entities associated with Golachab, it's that they burn to do destruction even on themselves or like on yourself. It's the way that uncontrolled rage or addiction doesn't just hurt others, but it wrecks you, the very person that can't handle that. Okay? By the way, there's something else that I want to say here. Is that it's very difficult to talk about Golachab without talking about its partner over here, which is Golahab and Shaklah. So this Golachab and Golahab and Shaklah. I am just going to say Shaklah for short, because again, it's a goddamn mouthful. So just like over here on the light side, we have Gevurah and Chesed, and they're a pair because Chesed is expansion and Gevurah is restriction. And so they kind of play off of each other. In Golachab, it's hard to talk about Golachab without Shaklah because they form a pair as well. But in our next video, we will talk more about Shaklah. And since in this video, we're going to understand Golachab, in the next video, when we talk about Shaklah, we will make a comparison. So I'm not going to talk too much about Shaklah in this video, but we will in the next video, and we'll see how they how they relate to each other. All right. So also this is a very this particular pair is like an ethical pair as well. Like Chesed is related to care and empathy and mercy, and Gevurah is justice, severity, and restriction. But here we're going to see its association with things like tyranny and fascism. But we're going to focus on Golachab today. Next week, we'll see how it relates to Shaklah. But going back to Golachab, all right? Like I said, when you're thinking of Golahab, think of hell itself, volcanic, eruptions, rivers of lava, flames everywhere, okay? So this is the source of the whole, your willpower is your inner fire. Golachab is the shadow of that willpower, all right? So understanding how to harness it is really important here because, like I said, Gevurah, what's it about? It's about discipline and justice and order. The shadow of that becomes iron law, tyranny, and fascism. You see how it's unrestrained, taken to the extreme. Now that's on a more like collective level. On a personal level, okay? On a personal level, Gevurah is about discipline and your willpower. The shadow of that are your own personal obsessions, fixations, or addictions that override your will until your life collapses around them. All right? So you can see that these pairs are an ethical pair, whether it's like in the collective political realm of justice and mercy versus tyranny and fascism. But on a personal level, it's about your own self-ethic, your own self-discipline, where Gevura is about, like, you know, making a, you know, if you were to follow a diet, right? Like, oh, a diet plan would be associated with Gevura. Golachab is obsession and addiction and destruction. So, in a nutshell, the key takeaway here is that Gevura is will, but Golachab is will turned into obsession, hyperfixation. It's when your willpower, instead of giving you discipline and focus, it locks you into that hyperfixated mode. And so this can cause a lot of problems in your life in terms of health, but also in terms of friends and family and your job. Because you might even say to yourself, oh, I don't have a problem. This is what I want. All right. Now, I really want to emphasize the difference of Golachab and Zarak. Because Zarak is the shadow of emotion or the shadow of desire. Golachab is the shadow of will. So Zarak is very fragmented. It's a bunch of desires. You scatter yourself by chasing way too many things. Lust, jealousy, envy, validation, until you're fragmented. So we talked about an analogy before. If you imagine this clear ball on the floor, a clear ball on the floor, and the ball is filled with a bunch of bees. If the bees are all buzzing in different directions, the ball's just going to sit there and it's not going to move. But if all the bees are buzzing in the same direction, the ball will start to roll and you'll get progress. Well, the bees are like your desires. If all your desires are unfocused and they're scattered, you're not going to make any progress. Zarak is like those scattered bees. Everything's scattered, fragmented, and unfinished. But in Golachab, that's not the case. In Golachab, you focus too much. You hyperfixate and obsess, which can lead to a lot of negative things like burnout. You work yourself to death, but even cruelty and tyranny. So it's important to understand the shadow of willpower is not weakness. It's when focus becomes obsession. So Gevura is often associated with like the imagery of a sword. And you can think of Gevura as the sword that like sets limitations and cuts away what's impeding you. Well, in Golachab, that sword becomes a weapon that can cut you and every one of you to pieces, okay? So let's start actually exploring these energies. So there are 4 levels. There are 4 levels to every Qlippoth. Or every, yeah. So I always mention this analogy. Think of a Qlippoth as like a building that has 4 levels in it. Okay? So this building has 4 levels in it. There's the Archonic level, the Archdemon level, the Demon level, and the Planetary level. All right, so there's 4 levels. Golachab is the building that sort of contains them all. And they're in a hierarchical fashion as well. Okay, so let's take a look at the first or highest level or layer, gonna bite my tongue here, layer of Golachab, okay? So this is the Archonic layer. And so this is, the Archonic layer is the level of the universal collective unconscious, and it's basically the cosmic pattern that defines and structures Golachab itself. It's the definition of what is in this Qlippoth. And in the sphere of what we're doing here on my channel is something very unique, and that's we're blending Gnosticism with Kabbalah. And so archons are rulers from the Gnostic tradition. And so the archon that we associate with Golachab is an archon known as Harmas. So Harmas appears in a variety of Gnostic Gospels. In the secret book of John, he's called the Eye of Flame. Very appropriate for the archon of Golachab, the burners, or the burning one. So Harmas, Eye of Flame, is the second archon created by the demiurge, or Yaldabaoth. And he's the second archon created, and one of the cosmic rulers whose job is to govern the material universe and to keep souls trapped. And his position as the second archon places him pretty damn high on the ladder. Basically one of Yaldabaoth's top lieutenants here. And so Harmas, as the Eye of Flame, is the embodiment of the evil eye. You can almost think of it like Lord of the Rings, the Eye of Sauron. That flaming, fiery eye that never stops watching, that never stops fixating. So Sauron from Lord of the Rings is a very good analogy here for Golachab and Harmas, Eye of Flame. Because what does that eye, the Eye of Sauron, do? It's always searching and fixating on the ring. It's obsessed with the ring and will burn and destroy everything in its path to get it. This is the essence of Golachab and Harmas. That fiery eye that never stops watching, and it's always fixating, a symbol of obsession. And the thing is that this gaze of Harmas is a very negative gaze. It doesn't bring joy when others succeed, it brings pain. It delights in others' suffering. In other words, that's like seeing, like perhaps someone that you see as competition, and they fail, and you rejoice in their failure. And let's pretend that they're not an asshole. Let's pretend that they're a nice person. But you rejoice in their failure. You delight in that suffering. Because Golachab is very much associated with, also, because Gevurah is justice, Golachab is injustice and cruelty. And so Harmas, the Eye of Harmas, delights in the suffering of others. So, the Eye of Flame of Harmas is fixation taken to the cosmic level. Exactly the kind of fixation that Golachab represents. So, we have at the Archonic level this burning, unrelenting stare that is always fixating and obsessing. It's a cosmic pattern of obsessive focus that can turn into cruelty and injustice. It doesn't care. Again, Eye of Sauron's a very good. Does Sauron care how he gets the ring? No, he's going to kill everyone in his path to get there. That is the pattern being described here. But it can very much manifest in your personal life in terms of, you don't care who you got to step on to get to the top, or losing friends and family because of addiction or whatever. So we see Harmas as an archon, which is a jailer and a warden who resides in the counterfeit heavens of chaos. And from these counterfeit heavens of chaos, the Eye of Flame is always watching and always obsessed. So that's the main pattern to take away here. Extreme fixation, obsessive watchfulness. And at the Archonic layer of Golachab, you get the universal imprint of hyperfixation itself, not just in the human sense, like addiction or burnout, but as a cosmic template. So Harmas, Eye of Flame, represents the highest universal expression of Golachab's shadow. All right? So that's that flame that can lock you and imprison you. So that's the Archonic level. Let's talk about the Archdemon level. So the second level is the Archdemon level. It is right under the Archonic level. And when we're talking about Archdemons, we're at the level of the human collective unconscious. So the Archon was the universal pattern. The Archdemon is when that universal pattern gets focused within the human collective. In other words, the Archdemon level is where Golachab's energy starts organizing the psyche around those patterns. In Golachab, the Archdemon is Asmodeus. Asmodeus, also called Ashmodai. So he's either called Asmodeus or Ashmodai. Now the name itself tells you a lot. Ashmodai comes from the Avestan language and means demon of wrath. So Ashmodai derives from demon of wrath. Asmodeus is a blend of Hebrew and Latin. Ashmod may derive from the Hebrew word shamad, meaning to destroy or exterminate. And Deus in Latin means God. So Ashmodeus is literally the destroying God. And this is how this Archdemon shows up. This Archdemon is the fiery destroyer and is known as the demon lord of lust and wrath. But remember here, the key is that this isn't like Zarak. It's not simple desire. It's lust as obsession. And so we understand Asmodeus in our system as the Archdemon of Golachab as representing obsession and wrath. And so this is a willful force that just takes, consumes, and destroys. So we can see this obsessive behavior associated with Ashmodeus in what's known as the Book of Tobit, where Ashmodeus kills the 7 husbands of Sarah on their wedding nights to stop them from getting it on. So this is not just lust like in the way we normally think about it. Like, oh, you know, they look really hot. No, this is I will destroy. This is like stalker energy, right? This is like obsessive stalker, hyper fixated energy, obsession taken to the point of destruction. And by the way, I want to remind you guys that we're talking about a lot of really dark energy here, but we need to be able to understand it. But here's the thing: if you do this work and you discover that, oh, hey, I'm a stalker or something that's real bad, go to therapy. You need to go to therapy. You need to see a professional. Okay, so I'm just gonna put it out there. Always going to therapy is a really good idea with this stuff. Okay, especially when you're dealing with this particular one. So the Jerusalem Bible calls Asmodeus the worst of demons. Now, here's something really cool about the legends of the origin of Asmodeus. Asmodeus himself says that he was born of a human mother and an angel father. Does that sound familiar? Angel father and a human mother. For those who just watched my video on the Book of Enoch and the Watchers, that should ring a bell. Okay, but let's talk about something. I'm going to get back to that in just a minute, but I want to lay out some other ideas. So some stories say that Asmodeus is the son of Agrat Bat Malat and King David. Now remember that Agrat is the archon of the Samael Qlippoth and is an aspect of Lilith. So basically, some legends say that Asmodeus is the son of Agrat, or an aspect of Lilith, and King David. But others say that Naama is his wife. Naama is is at the level here, located at Lilith. Okay? The archdemon of Lilith. So Naama is the archdemon of Lilith, also called Lilith the Younger, and is also an aspect of Lilith. So some say, in a nutshell, some say that Asmodeus is the son of Agrat and the wife of Naama. However, there's another, and I believe the most fitting myth is not that he's the wife of Naama and the son of Agrat, but rather that he's the child of Naama. So one source says that he's the child of Naama and an angel called Shamdan. Again, pretty close to Shamad, destruction. Shamdan. So the child of Naama and the angel of Shamdan. And remember, in a book called The Testament of Solomon, Asmodeus says, let me look at my notes here. I wrote this quote down. Asmodeus says, he says, I was born of angels' seed by a daughter of man. I was born by angels' seed by a daughter of man. So that fits very well with Naama being the child of Naama and the angel Shemdan. Why? Well, because Naama was originally a human woman that later got interpreted as a demon. And Naama is said to be the one who caused the Watchers to fall. So Naama, as the one who caused the Watchers to fall, fits in very well with Naama being the mother of Asmodeus. But as you can see, in either way, you have Asmodeus being related to Lilith in a ton of different ways. Whether it's the daughter or whether it's the child of Naama or the wife of Naama or the child of Agrat. Agrat and Naama are aspects of Lilith. So whether it's a child of Lilith, but that's how I believe the myth that is most fitting is the one where he is the child of Naama and Shemdan, because it matches what he says in the testament of Solomon when he said he was born of an angel seed and a daughter of man. And guess what that would make him? That would make him one of the Nephilim, a hybrid of angel and human. But remember, according to the book of Enoch, all of the Nephilim were destroyed except that they became evil spirits. So Asmodeus would be one of these dark spirits that was once one of the Nephilim. Okay? But Asmodeus, which is the destroying god, isn't that such a cool title? I love that title. Anyway, he's not just about lust. He's also called a prince of revenge. And revenge, like lust, is another form of obsession. Are you seeing the common theme here? He's associated with fixations that won't let go. And here's something that's really cool. Asmodeus shows up in the legends of King Solomon. Now, the reason why this is important is, according to legend, Solomon summons Asmodeus along with a bunch of other demons and harnesses their power to have them construct his temple. Okay? So Solomon invokes Asmodeus and a horde of demons to construct his temple. Now, that story is an allegory for shadow integration. Solomon represents the higher self. And by invoking these demons and using them to build the temple, that's harnessing the destructive forces of the unconscious and turning them towards the accomplishment of the higher self's goal. So Solomon is a representative of the higher self, integrating the shadow. So really, Solomon and the building of the temple is a very powerful metaphor or legend for this. So we are all Solomon, basically, in this story. We are all Solomon constructing our temple. And but here's the interesting thing. That Solomon rules, right? But then Asmodeus tells Solomon that one day his kingdom will be divided. And of course, what that means in our terms is that the psyche will be divided. And we all have divided, all of our psyches are divided right now. So Asmodeus tells Solomon, one day your kingdom will be divided. And guess what happens? Eventually, Asmodeus overthrows Solomon and takes his throne and rules in his place. Now, Solomon eventually comes back and regains his throne. But do you see the allegory here? The higher self being dethroned by the shadow. That's the shadow's dark will overpowering the higher will. Obsession overthrowing wisdom. So this is a huge warning to not being integrated. Because if you're integrated, your kingdom, your mind, your soul will be divided, and a demon will rule. Your shadow will rule. But you as the higher self wants to be the one that's enthroned, where you have the darkness and the light working together as one to accomplish the will of the king. Your will, your higher self's will, the will of the inner star. So you're seeing a lot of common themes here. So Asmodeus has also been the overseer of gambling, which again makes sense because gambling is addiction, obsession, compulsion, will turned against itself. So you can see that Asmodeus, as the archdemon of Golachab, is the perfect embodiment of destructive will. Determination that becomes compulsion and obsession, and focus that burns everything to ash. And remember, that's the pattern that organizes your psyche around those concepts. That's what the archdemon represents. By the way, I'll show you here the sigil of Asmodeus. You probably can't see it very well. Let's see. I'm trying to make it hit the light so you can perhaps see it better. So this is the sigil of Asmodeus. That's not a very clear picture, but hey, you can just Google it. Just Google it. You can see the sigil if you're interested. Okay. Let's talk about the third layer, okay, which is under the archdemon layer, and it's the demon level. So what's the demon level? It's the burners or the burning ones. The burning ones or the burners are the demons on the demon level. And at the demon level, this is the level of what in psychology is called complexes. And what complexes are is the way your personal psyche organizes itself around Golachab's energy. It's not a universal cosmic pattern like the Archon. And it's not even a pattern of the human collective unconscious, which is the archdemon. But they're the way that you personally experience these things. So essentially it's like this. The archdemon is responsible for the organization of your psyche according to those patterns. But the complexes is how that is unique to every person. Your Golachab, inner Golachab, is going to be different from someone else's. Everyone has it, but it's going to be different. And how it is for you are how your complexes form, which means your personal experiences and memories and concepts that you have around things like obsession, fixation, and addiction. So Archonic level, Harmos, universal pattern of fixation. The archdemon level, Asmodeus, the human collective archetype of this obsession and wrath. But at the demon level, those patterns become personal. And it's the moments that you yourself have been burned, because those moments don't vanish. They leave marks. They leave psychic scars, scars of the psyche, marks that become complexes. So like maybe you grew up, say everyone's different. Maybe you grew up in a house where your parents were always mad and they got mad over everything. This can form an anger complex where maybe you feel like the only real way you can get attention or feel powerful is to be angry. Maybe you were in a relationship with a hyper-fixated, obsessive, jealous partner. That can leave you with a complex of fixation. There's a, maybe you were betrayed by someone, and this wound turned into a complex of revenge. Someone betrayed you or cheated on you or just didn't treat you well, and this turned into a complex of revenge. You think about this over and over and over. Even subtle things like the pressure of being the best at school or at work, perfectionism, That can build a complex of achievement where you're just going to burn yourself out. So the demon level, hopefully that makes sense. The demon level is how that pattern, how the pattern of Golachab is structured in you personally based on your experiences, your memories, and your concepts particular to you. All right. But here's the thing. They're not quite actions yet. They're the inner templates that will shape how you act later. We're still at the level of psychic organization, the organization of the psyche. There's the universal layer, the human collective layer, the complex layer, and this is all how your psyche organizes. Now, I don't talk much about the demon level because the demon layer, it's unique to everyone. And at some point, if you guys want videos on the demon layer, that could be its own whole series because there's a lot to it working with those inner demons. Right now, we're understanding the big picture. So if you guys want that, let me know in the comments. We could do that at some point. But okay, so let's move to the fourth level, which is the planetary level. And so the planetary represents action, where Golachab becomes action, where those patterns in the psyche actually forms behavior and actions in the real world. You see the difference? It's what you actually do, the behavior itself. Now remember, this has nothing to do with the actual planets in the sky. I really want to hammer that in. These are symbols, these are metaphors. Just like these demons aren't winged red creatures with horns floating around. They're aspects of your psyche. Same with the planets. The planets aren't about the planets in the sky. They represent your actions, right? Your behavior. So, for Gevurah, the planetary force is Mars, which represents will, strength, assertion, discipline. But in Golachab, we have the shadow of Mars, or blood Mars. So Mars in Gevurah, blood Mars in Golachab. So here's the thing. Mars in alchemy is always associated with the metal iron, okay? So in alchemy, Mars is associated with the metal iron. But guess what? Mars is actually made of iron. There is a ton of iron actually literally on Mars. And the reason that Mars looks red is because that iron is rusting. It's rust. Mars is red because it's a planet covered in rust. So think about that. Here we have the shadow of iron as rust. So blood Mars, rusted Mars, is rusted iron, where strength and willpower have corroded and twisted and turned destructive. Instead of assertion, you get aggression. Instead of leadership, you get domination and control. Instead of healthy competition, you get selfishness and hyper competition, victory at any cost, no matter who you hurt. Instead of willful focus, hyperfixation, burning yourself out, addiction to substances, any gambling, sex, validation, anything that becomes obsessive that you need. Could even be something like revenge. Someone wrongs you, you just can't let it go. Plays over and over in your head. We talked about becoming a workaholic and burnout. But the main thing in the planetary level is where it actually becomes action. So it's when it becomes, you know, you actually working until you burn yourself out. You stop eating, you stop seeing friends, you stop sleeping until your fixations burn you down. It can result in you like exerting power over others just to like flex your power or to humiliate people. And all these actions that just push yourself to exhaustion because of these obsessions that you have, or contrary to your health or your well-being or your true will. Your true will, your higher will, has been overridden. Gevura is associated with willpower, and we want to achieve elevated will. Golachab is when that will gets corroded and destructive. And so blood Mars is the actions that result from these inner hyperfixations that you have. All right? So hopefully that makes sense. You can sure think of a ton of examples in life. So what I want to do now is talk about Golachab unintegrated versus Golachab integrated. Remember, Golachab unintegrated is bad. Golachab integrated is good. We always want to strive for integration. And remember, integration is just a fancy word for deal with it. Finding a way to deal with it. So when you integrate something, you find a way to deal with something. So you need to face your demon, find a way to deal with it, rather than just ignoring it or letting it possess you. So, but if you don't deal with it, if you're not integrated, you're unintegrated. You're not integrated. And there are two ways to not be integrated: repression or possession. So let's bring out the poop metaphor again, because yay, we love the poop metaphor. So think of it like poop. Golahab is a big pile of shit on your floor. Golachab is a big pile of shit on your floor. But this is magic shit that you can't throw away. All right? You can't just flush it down the toilet. This is magic shit. You can't do that. So repressing Golachab is like covering the shit with your rug. Doesn't go anywhere. You just can't see it. But everyone that comes to your house is going to smell that shit like from a mile away. That's repression. You ignore it, but it festers and destroys your life. Possession is like rolling around in the shit. You've ever seen, dogs do that. Dogs love rolling around in shit. I grew up in Montana, and we had dogs, and there was cow poop everywhere, and they would always roll around in shit. It was so gross. It was disgusting. And then sometimes they'd roll around in shit and want to like run up to you and jump on you. And that's awful. Anyway, I digress. So possession is like just giving into it, rolling in it. Integration is like using the shit for manure, for compost, manure. So using it in a way where the shit now is used to help you grow something or accomplish your will. Create something, right? So that's repression, possession, and integration in a nutshell. You found a way to deal with the shit. So what happens when you repress or just try and cover up or ignore Golachab? Well, when you repress Golachab, you deny your own fire. You go, oh, that's not me. You push down your anger. You push down your drive. And you push down your capacity for power. You might think, oh, power, oh, that's a sin. No, I'm going to push that down. But when you refuse that energy in yourself, you hand it over. That's when someone else's will steps in to dominate you. The repression of Golachab can result in others dominating you. Someone else's will stepping all over you. So this could result in like you staying in an abusive relationship. Submitting to a controlling boss or teacher or parent, letting them rule you because you refuse to access your own fiery power. It can be like you convince yourself, oh, I'm not competitive. But then you get walked all over in situations when you should stand your ground. Now, that's on a personal level. On a collective level, there's even more examples here of like submission to authoritarianism. Whole groups of people repress their own fiery power, and as a result, they hand it over to a tyrant. Citizens that silence themselves out of fear and obey and give away their freedom because they don't want to face the shadow of Golachab in themselves. It results in societies that repress healthy anger at injustice. And so they accept domination and tyranny as order. So this is when you live under someone else's iron fist, because you won't pick up your own sword. That's what happens here. That's when it's repressed. Now, on the flip side, let's talk about possession. Possession is when you let it take over your life. You not only just do you acknowledge it, but you let it. I mean, maybe you either acknowledge it or not. Either way, it takes over your life. So possession by Golachab is being consumed by it. You become the fire. You don't repress the fire. And so you become obsessive and severe and destructive. You could become that controlling partner who is hyper jealous and obsessive. You can become that stalker. You become that workaholic, obsessing and driving yourself to exhaustion and into burnout. And you know that you're doing it, but you still do it. And collective examples of this, is tyranny and fascism itself. Enforcing order through fear. Political systems built on severity and punishment and cruelty and unjust restriction instead of justice. Leaders who rule with an iron fist and demand submission and burn any dissenters down. That's Golachab possessed. It's death-bringing judgment, order enforced through cruelty. It becomes restriction, because Gevura is healthy restriction, like, everyone needs boundaries. But Golachab, it becomes restricted to until it becomes death. Golachab is on the pillar of death, by the way. And you can see why. It's when you become so restrictive, you restrict the life out of everything. It becomes a prison. Okay. What about Golachab integrated? When you integrate Golachab, or face Golachab and deal with it, you claim that fire and you direct it and you put it in service of transformation. Like King Solomon. King Solomon, having Ashmodei help build the temple. Directed and put in service of transformation. Not now, of course, unintegrated would be Ashmodei overthrowing Solomon. But when properly integrated, that doesn't happen. Now remember, okay. I don't know if I really want to get into it. If you guys want a video on the whole legend of Solomon and the building of Solomon's temple and the demons, let me know. Drop a comment and we can do a video on that. I was going to go off on a tangent on that, but I should not. So instead of burning you alive from the inside or enslaving others, it actually becomes the flame that breaks chains and it can clear the way for something new and can actually increase freedom. So on a personal level, that can be about channeling righteous anger. It's okay to be angry when you should be, but channeling that, but in a directed way, in a controlled way, and use that to create boundaries, to not allow yourself to get walked over, not through being cruel or being an asshole, but by standing up. And using that fire, another example, instead of being a slave to your addictions or obsessions or destructive habits, you can use that fiery will to break those habits and burn those chains away and redirect that energy from addiction to something else. And again, this destructive energy can lead to transformation. Quitting a toxic job, destruction. Ending an abusive relationship, destruction. Burning down an old identity, an old self, so you can rise from the ashes anew. You can focus your discipline so that it's done in a healthy way to redirect your obsessions from something unhealthy to something healthy. Like direct it from drinking to learning how to play the guitar or writing a book or whatever. But you don't want to hyperfixate. You want to be motivated. But we'll talk about more in a second, right? You don't want to just give up one addiction for another, but you can redirect it to something healthy. And then once it's directed into something healthy, you can set up boundaries so you don't hyperfixate. Now, on a collective level, right? Remember, unintegrated on a collective level is like tyranny and fascism. Well, on a collective level, Golachab integrated is revolution. But it's important to understand this is not like chaotic. Golachab is not chaotic rebellion and anarchy. The revolution of Golachab is focused resistance against tyranny. This is like organized revolution. It's not like mob revolution. This is organized. Will concentrated and disciplined against tyranny, burning down fascism, burning down oppression to clear the ground for liberation and freedom. Golachab integrated are movements that tear down corrupt systems so that real justice can be born. And you can think about this on all different levels. On a collective level, where destruction leads to transformation, destructing old patterns of society, unjust orders, unjust. You can just look at our world and think of all the different unjust systems that exist. Breaking those down to create something that increases freedom and is equitable. So Golachab integrated on a collective level can result in like revolution with a plan. Precise. That sword becomes a sword of liberation. Because the truth is that tyranny and revolution both draw on the same force. But when you integrate it, you claim that fire and stop being burned by it, and you start wielding it to burn down what enslaves you. So, yeah. By the way, we're using a lot of metaphors here today about like burning things down and swords and all that. Look, these are metaphors. Don't do anything dangerous. Don't do anything illegal. Okay, I want to make that very clear. But I'm gonna give some exercises now, example of exercises. But as always, I just want to remember, Golachab is very intense, destructive energy. So if you do, realize that you have some dangerous aspects, see a therapist, see a mental health professional. There's no shame in that. Everyone should have a therapist, if possible. I know it's not realistic or possible for some people, but it's always a help. Okay, but let's talk about some exercises. Now, remember, when working with these energies, you should always pair it with a ritual and an exercise. Okay, a ritual and a practical exercise. The ritual I've made available as a free download for members of the channel. You can find that at the membership link tab on my channel. But the exercises I'm going to give to you guys right now. Exercises for examples of integrating Golachab. Let me pull up my notes here. And remember, these are just ideas for you to riff off of, to get in the right mindset of how you integrate something like this. So this isn't like set in stone or you have to do it this way. It's to get the ball rolling, to get you thinking about how you can deal with this sort of energy. Okay? You can transform anger into boundaries. Instead of denying your anger, use it as a signal. Next time you feel anger, don't just push it away. Think about what boundary of mine is being crossed to cause this anger. A lot of us don't do that. We get angry about something, we just ignore it. But it's going to keep happening until we blow up. Boom, volcano, Golachab. So instead, use anger as a signal. Don't deny it. Don't act on it. Don't be a dick. Don't blow up. But just go, hey, I'm angry. Why am I angry? What boundary of mine is being crossed to cause this anger? Then write it down and find a way to deal with it. Decide how to communicate with the person that's crossing it, or if it's your job or whatever, figure out a way how to enforce that boundary directly instead of letting it burn you up inside. Let's see, obsession into mastery. So you can pick an obsession that you have, something that consumes your thoughts, and ask, how can I turn this into a skill instead of a compulsion? For example, let's say you are obsessed or addicted to video games. You play video games all day long. Well, could you perhaps channel that into game design? Learning how to do game design? And you can think of a plethora of examples where you think about something that you're obsessed with, and how can I turn, if you're obsessed with movies, become an actor or a film writer or a script writer. Or if you're upset, just think about what your obsessions are. Think about how you can transform that into mastering something that's going to serve your life instead of eat you and burn you alive. So you can use it to break your chains of addiction. So similarly, track the triggers of your obsessions or compulsive behaviors. And use your willpower to break. This is different, right? Like the other was, how can I turn it into, well, figure out a way how you can replace that destructive outlet with something positive. This is like a full replace. Like if you're addicted to porn or addicted to video games or addicted to drinking or whatever, right? So let's say you're addicted to drinking. The previous example doesn't really fit here unless you're like, oh, I'm going to be a open a, you know, a bar or something. But if you're addicted to alcohol, you probably shouldn't open a bar. So there's some things that you can't, that doesn't really apply to. So instead, focus on your willpower to replace it with something that is constructive, like it's a full replace, like exercise, fitness, journaling, creative processes. And because that energy has to go somewhere. It's very hard. It's when it comes to addiction, it's very hard to overcome it through just sheer force of will. It's not impossible, but it's very hard. You usually have to have a plan. And part of that plan may include redirecting that energy to something positive and productive. Now, you don't want that to become an unhealthy addiction, because it can. You know, if you channel your addiction of drinking to you know, playing the guitar, you don't want to play till your fingers bleed, or to fitness, you don't want to do fitness to the point where you're, you know, destroying your life. But you get the idea. You still need to approach it in a healthy way. Let's see. We talk about this one a lot, and that is channeling wrath and anger into justice work. So I won't go into too much detail because we talk about that a lot on my channel, but take your righteous anger about injustice and give it a channel. So choose an issue that makes you mad and direct that energy into action. If you're mad about, you know, how people treat animals, volunteer at a shelter. Volunteering, organizing, or just speaking out. Speaking up. Because focused anger can actually be fuel for justice. As fuel, right? So here's another one. You can do a burnout check-in. This one is important. If you tend to hyperfixate, set a fire alarm. In other words, when you notice yourself hyperfixating, like let's say you're on your phone scrolling, or a hobby, or even work, if you tend to hyperfixate, give yourself a timer, a hard limit, 30 minutes, an hour and a half, depending on what it is. But set a timer. And then the moment that timer goes off, stop. But the key is don't just do nothing, because you have to redirect that energy into something else. And so this is about catching that hyperfixation, but redirecting it by setting those hard limits and then changing it. Oh, and yes, I forgot to mention this as well. Is that because this can be related to sexual energy as well. So Golachab can be, long story short, BDSM can be an option as well. Because Golachab's energy is about obsession, domination, pain, destructive lust. You don't want to deny it, but you don't want to just act out on it. And so BDSM can create a safe container with consent and being safe and consensual. It allows you to explore those energies. Domination you can explore through power play. And it can be very cathartic, and catharsis through pain. Again, consensual and safe. Making sure that you have aftercare and ground the experience in actual compassion, showing that compassion can exist there. You can be very empathetic and compassionate and caring, even while engaged with BDSM play with a partner that you care about. And it can become like an artful expression. So in a nutshell, Golahab is this intense fire of will that has been inverted into obsession and fixation that can result in tyranny and fascism and destruction. But when properly integrated, you can use that as fuel to burn things down that are holding you back, that are enslaving you, and creating freedom. Ultimately, it's about creating freedom, freedom for yourself, freedom for the world. Without it can be tyranny, but when integrated, it can be freedom. See, that's why Golachab is on the pillar of death. So remember, this is the pillar of death, this is the pillar of chaos, and this is the pillar of rebellion. So the pillar of death, Golachab is on there, because death is about, when properly integrated, destroying things that hold you back, outdated old systems, old ways of thinking, old patterns. And so death is also transformation. Think of the phoenix that dies and rises reborn in the ashes. Christ that was crucified and rose again and ascended to heaven. We have with death the theme of transformation. So Golachab on the pillar of death is one of the forces of death that can be awful, but can be used for freedom when integrated properly. So I think we're going to end talking about Golachab there. But like I said before, we didn't talk at all about Golahab Shaklah or Shaklah. And that's what we will talk about next week if you guys want to see that, because these two really go hand in hand, just like Gevurah and Chesed go hand in hand. So we're going to see that next time. But as always, my friends, tell me in the comments what you think. If something needs more clarity, let me know. If you're enjoying this, let me know. It always helps to know what you guys like, so I know to make more content like that or not. And make sure you like and subscribe so more people see this information. It's incredibly important because it all starts with us. When we integrate our personal shadows, the collective gets integrated as well, because the collective shadow is made up of a multitude of individual shadows. So as above, so below. Let's see. If you want to help out even more, become a member so you will get access to, I'm going to make a whole summary on everything we talked about as a free download for members on this. You can access all my other ones for free as well for members. And then you can check out as well exclusive videos. We're having a video right after this called The One Sin Jesus Says You'll Never Be Forgiven For, the unforgivable sin. Yeah, did you know that there's a sin Jesus won't forgive? I was terrified of that as a kid. We're going to be talking about that. And yeah, make sure that you check out my books and follow me on Spotify. I'm trying to grow my channel over there so that we can reach even more people across platforms. So go follow me on Spotify. Links to all of these things are in the description of this video. And I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Dallas, Nusalina, Chris Magistus, Eric, they call me Trinity, Solange, Dakota, Keelan, Zombie Ninja, I think, right? Zombie, yes, Zombie Ninja. That one always gets me. And Obi-Wan and everyone else. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys. I'll see y'all soon. Ad Astra.